President Donald Trump called NAFTA the worst trade deal maybe ever signed anywhere, so he wants to renegotiate it or kill it altogether. So what is NAFTA? The letters stand for North American Free Trade Agreement. Starting in 1994, it bound the US, Canada, and Mexico into a single free trade zone. That means avocados from Mexico, auto parts from the US, oil from Canada, and thousands of other products can cross borders tax-free within the NAFTA zone. NAFTA was signed by President Bill Clinton and was intended to encourage trade between the three countries. Canada was already America's top trading partner, so the agreement's big goal was to link Mexico to its northern neighbors and modernize its economy. By creating good jobs in Mexico, it was expected to reduce the number of Mexicans crossing illegally into the US to find work. From the beginning, critics warned the deal would hurt American workers.
Pay $1 an hour for your labor, have no health care, and no retirement, and you don't care about anything but making money, there will be a giant sucking sound going south.
True enough, many American companies set up factories in Mexico. America's trade surplus with Mexico turned into a big deficit. And despite NAFTA's intentions, the number of Mexicans living illegally in the US more than doubled between 1995 and 2007 before going into a steady decline. But economists say the impact on US jobs overall has been small, partly because the $19 trillion American economy is so huge that trade with Mexico doesn't make much difference. American consumers benefited as cheaper products were shipped north. Detroit has been a booming business supplying auto parts to the Mexican factories that assemble cars. Companies with operations straddling the US-Mexican border warned that rewriting or canceling NAFTA would throw their businesses into disarray. Some economists worry that a disruption in trade with the US will wreck Mexico's economy and send more migrants across the border in search of work.
Should this tactical zoom lens be made illegal?
Okay, so we got a video about NAFTA down there, and let's just have a quick discussion about it. What do you think improvements were made with the new deal that we have with Mexico and Canada? If anybody's done any type of research about it and would like to share it.
Didn't bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. wasn't the purpose of it to try to boost job projections for us here?
Well, I mean, as you saw on the chart there was a major trading deficit. In other words, we bought a lot of their stuff, they didn't buy a lot of our stuff. And so that means a lot of our wealth went south and north to Canada. And as far as job creation, for the last 20 years, we've had a grant that was available to companies that if you lost your job because of NAFTA, the federal government would retrain you into a new job. And we had classes full for the last 10 years of people getting new training because NAFTA took their job. So we came out losers in that deal. And the new deal has got higher standards for whoever we're trading with for what they have to have paying their labor and what they have to do as far as protecting the environment. When you're just interested in profits, you'll go somewhere where they don't care how bad they pollute or they don't care how bad they treat their health. And so the new law has a lot of provisions in there that says, no, you're going to do business just like you did in the United States. And the taxes, the corporate taxes, when they went down from the highest on the planet to 21%, brought a lot of the manufacturing back to the US. And that's about to change. And it's going to go back to the highest corporate taxes on the planet. So we will probably lose that momentum we had for manufacturing and for supply chain and all that when that takes effect. But NAFTA in principle was a good idea because it cut down on the number of inspections and tariffs and all this stuff that was going on at the borders. But we had a massive increase in illegal drugs and counterfeit items coming across our border because we had this trade deal and we didn't check every vehicle or a large percentage of them. So again, with what we talked about, container and the FAST program, that's been put in place to make sure that we still do have security at our borders on what's coming in, and no matter what our trade agreement is. So they've recognized there is a reason that we need to check suspicious cargo, not just flag them through because, you know, we have a relationship with them. Okay, so we have chapter 8 and 9 today, and I can tell you that 9 is pretty abbreviated because it's about converting from standard to metric. And when you take the exam, it's going to have the equations on how to do that conversion. And you'll also have a calculator, a virtual calculator that's on each of those questions. And so it's just a fact of reading the question and trying to see, does it want me to convert it to the standard measurement or does it want it to convert it to the metric measurement? And so that's the only real question that you have to answer, because you're going to enter in the exact numbers into the digital calculator, and it's going to tell you if that pallet will fit on that truck or if that case will fit on that shelf. So it's pretty self-explanatory. And there's some other questions in that chapter about weights, scales, different types of scales. So we'll take a look at that. But we're going to spend the majority of our time looking at 8, 9, and then reviewing and giving you maybe a new resource to go out and prepare for your CLT. A quick update on the CLAs. We had a onrush of CLA passes this last week. So congratulations to all the students that got to finally take their test either on campus or using ProctorU. And I've had some questions about the CLT. You purchased this test personally with your enrollment, and it's good for a year. And so I would like you to take it as soon as you can through the summer while this is still, you know, actively in your memory. But you have up to a year to take the CLT. If you decide you want to take it this summer, I'm teaching this summer, and we will have this same class offer. So if you wanted, I'll make sure all of you have the links to come in. And if you wanted to come in and just see a couple of the classes about the CLT to refresh your memory, you're more than welcome to do that.
But Mr. Yancey, so CLA is on ProctorU now?
We have several students that have taken the CLA. Now, we've had some odd situations that my test administrator is like, we don't know what the hell is going on, where we send screenshots of the folks' enrollment in the MSSC and on ProctorU, and MSSC can't find their membership and ProctorU can't find their account. So it's crazy. It's not a common name thing like John Smith or anything like that. We've got some folks who have, you know, some very different names.
Like my name.
Yeah. So if it's an Ivy Tech student, because you're getting the Ivy at ivytech.edu extension on there, but they have researched, and she's went back through one at a time, everybody in this class, to find out why their stuff's not working at MSSC or ProctorU. And when she comes back, she says, look, I've seen the screenshots you sent. I know that they're real, but they don't see them at that end. I've even had students try to recreate, and because they made one with their email address, they can't because it's already taken. So it's just a gremlin or something wacky going on there. This is probably the worst semester we've had on that coordination with ProctorU.
Okay, that's cool. I just I want to hold up the class, but after the class, I would just get Robin. Is her name Robin?
Yeah.
I would just get her information and the phone number, and then call and see what day she works, and then go up there.
Okay, yeah, the test center, they gave us an open invitation. If we can't work out something with Proctor but our state representative for our program, our vice president, is meeting with Proctor and MSSC. It's not just Indianapolis having these problems. It's other regions in the state that are teaching that are running in the same situation. So we have to have a better refined way of getting students their registration, then getting it confirmed like by week 2 or week 3. So we're not in week 8 and still have students that haven't got a clear light to take it with Proctor U. That's supposed to be ironed out in the 2nd week. As far as the CLT, I see a couple folks that have scheduled for the CLT, and that's good. You have to pass the CLA before you could get a CLT test set up on Proctor U. You could probably, I have seen a couple of them that scheduled their CLA and their CLT at their local test center, but they would cancel the 2nd one if you failed the CLA. But so far, we've had a pretty good run at it.
They also require you to wait 3 days in between the CLA and the CLT.
They tell us 14 days, just so that they make sure that you have the chance to get your results and everything back. But 3 is a major improvement, and it's probably because they know that this is towards the end of the semester, and they've been at fault as to why you don't have 2 weeks to wait. You know, if you want to try to get it done. So, how does this play into your grade? As you know, if you've read our syllabus, you get 0 points for taking or passing the CLA or CLT. It's not part of the course points. So there's 1,000 points out there that you earn doing preparatory work, your videos, your discussions, and your quizzes that you have each week, and then your projects. So it shouldn't affect your grade. In the syllabus, it says that you must at least attempt the CLA to pass the course. We've waived that because of all of the situations that we've encountered. Whatever you have for points is what you would earn for a grade. And so it's pretty easy to figure out what your grade is with 1,000 points. 900 or more is an A, 800 or more is a B, 700 or more is a C, 600 or more is a D. So if you say had 750 points and you went and took the CLA after the class was over and that moved you up to 800, I would change your grade from a C to a B. And I can do that up to a year from now. So if you took both of them, the CLA and the CLT, you would be earning 100 bonus points, and that could actually maybe bump you up into even closer to an A. Like I said, if you got the CLT, you got an A. So you could have 500 points, pass your CLT. That's the whole purpose of you taking this course, is to get the CLT. And so you get the CLT, you got an A.
Are we required to take the CLT?
You are not required to take the CLT.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
You have paid for it. And like I say, it's good for a year. Once you get out there and you find out that, wow, that CLT could have got me that interview or could have got me, $10 more an hour, it's your asset to come back and take. But if you're a logistics student, if you're actually in our program, we want to know why you wouldn't take the CLT, because that is a major milestone in preparing you for a successful career in supply chain. So for our students, we pressure you to take it, because if you want to be successful, you're going to have that certification, and the knowledge that you have preparing for that is going to help you in other certifications. I can testify to that. Today I took my transportation certification exam. I want to be able to teach that to you folks. And so I'd say 30% of the information in that course is in this course. So it was like a review when it comes to the transportation areas. And they have a lot of stuff about federal agencies and customs and all that, same as we do in this class. So It was, I mean, even they even asked questions about what the sizes of pallets are and things of that nature. So we've covered that material in this intro class, and it was a carryover into that certification. In other certifications, the CLT information was very useful for my green belt, and I'm working on the procurement certification now, and there's a lot of stuff that we covered in it. So that's the reason we want you to take advantage of that certification, is to better prepare you for future challenges in your career field. Okay, so this chapter 8, I think we have one person in our class that's taken the CLT that might be able to give us some feedback on that. But chapter 8, I've got the PowerPoints up. I usually don't do PowerPoints, so let's get the textbook back. They don't really cover everything that you could see on the test. So that's why I printed those for the folks who asked for them and sent them to them, so they got a real resource to do well on the exam. Okay.
Are all the exams the same, like the CLT, when you take it, is it the same one for everyone, or is it all mixed up?
They have a data bank for questions that everybody gets a different one. And so, I mean, they're similar. It may just word them different, the questions. I mean, how many different ways can you ask how big a pallet is? But they do have a test bank that rotates around the different questions. They're not so different that you can't prepare for it, you know, from what we discuss in class. So that's one of the things. Okay, so there's a exercise that is associated with chapter 8, and it kind of covers everything that you need to know about chapter 8. So if you have read the chapter and you've done the exercises that are associated with it on the quizzes, then you should do pretty well on this quick exercise. It's a mix and match kind of thing. So why don't we give that a try before we get into the chapter, and let's just see how people do on it. I'll probably be greatly surprised at how well you folks have prepped for it. So let me find my Zoom one. Here we go. And share that screen. Okay. And so let's make this a little bit bigger. Can I see it all? No. All right. So this is one of those where you put the number in for what actually matches it, or I think we can drag and drop it. Nope, we put the number in. All right. So these are the different terms, and this is the verbiage for them. So we can just start with number 1, and it's the height and width consists and has lengths of 20, 40, and 45 feet. Consistent and has lengths of 20, 40, and 45 feet. And you can see the different options we have here. Or can you see them? Maybe I need to try to make it bigger.
I think it would be an ISO container.
That's correct. So I think I'm going to put the number here if it'll let me type in anything there. Great. I thought this thing was interactive, but it's not going to be. All right, so yeah, ISO container. The form provided to the government which verifies that the goods were produced within a country.
Certificates of origin?
That is correct. So we're on the third one. The trade agreement between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. So a little
NAFTA.
NAFTA.
Yes. Okay. Straddles the containers to quickly move trailers between road and rail vehicles.
Gantry crane?
That is correct. Products produced in a foreign country to be sold in this country.
Imports.
Imports.
Yes. Responsible for enforcing laws with regard to both incoming and outgoing cargo.
Discussing
They
border
use customs
protection?
border. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Which one is it?
Number 7, and I'll send this this exercise to you, so you got it for a review resource. For international shipments, this must contain port of entry, currency used, country of origin, and additional charges or discounts.
US Customs and Border Protection.
This is a
It's a form.
That
Uh,
would be intermodal transportation or no?
Commercial invoice.
it's a commercial invoice.
Okay.
Okay, so we've seen some of these other forms. This will be the first time you get to see what a commercial invoice is about, is in this chapter. So that's not odd that you didn't know what that one was. Number 8, semi-trailer designed to carry ISO containers.
Is that a skeletal trailer?
It is. Does anybody have an idea what the skeletal trailer is?
It's just really a trailer that's designed just for like rail cars and containers just to go directly on it.
Yeah.
There's
So,
no floor, it's just a frame.
yeah, it doesn't have walls or a
Yeah.
door or anything. It's just the frame, and it will change to 20, 40, or 45 feet. So it has like this expansion capacity on it. So one of these skeletal trailers can carry any size ISO container. Document, which includes the customer address, invoice numbers, and package weights.
Bill of lading.
That's it. Okay. And then we've got document used by carrier or shipping department and acknowledges that a specific goods have been received on board for shipment.
Bill and receipt.
Is that on here?
No. Oh, that's the ship. Yeah, that's
Shipping
not.
manifest.
Manifest.
Yes, that's correct. So when it says, what was the wordage there? Okay, it's a carrier or shipping department acknowledges specific goods. So you're going to have a list of the goods, and some documents only have the weight or a brief description. That bad, Oscar, the shipping manifest has item 1, box of chiclets, item 2, cheese. It'll have everything that's in that shipment. Okay, so we got I think like 2 more here. International organization that supervises global trade.
World Trade Organization.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks unhappy with that organization. Apparently China owns it. Okay, the introduction of standardized containers and pallets allows for quick transfer of goods between modes. I've got my transportation, I think. I've got my bar there. I can't see the last sentence.
Intermodal transportation.
Yes, intermodal transportation. You can use any 2 or 3 different types of modes. So you folks did really well on that. I was happily surprised. Great. All right, so we want to check out chapter 8. For some reason my textbook's not kicking in here. There we go. It's upside down. Yummy. Let's try opening a different version, see if it's right side up.
How's your pup doing?
Oh gosh, I'm scarred for life. That little turd is scratched and bit and chewed. He ate the corner out of our deck around our pool. So that's got to be replaced. Let's see. Anything that looks like a stick, he wants to try to drag it around. So he's got 2 or 3 brooms that he's claimed. And, yeah, I'm trying to teach him how to sweep so he can earn his keep. But the older dog is got the patience of a saint, because he goes around carrying this dog on his neck like mini me or something connected to him. And he went back for his follow-up, and the dog went from, he was born at 2 pounds. We got him at 4, and now he weighs 12 in like 3 weeks. So just like his owner, he's going to be a chunky Comedina type.
Yeah, he's gonna get bigger than that next week.
Yeah. And of all the siblings, they all had to come back that same week. He's got them all by a pound. So he was the rump when we got it. That's history. But he's doing well. I mean, he's asleep somewhere now since he kept everybody up all night wanting to play. He really had a heavy workout. So now he's going to sleep all day. He's a vampire dog. But I don't mind just keeping him while we're trying to teach. Otherwise, he'd be hanging off of my feet, chewing my shoes up or something.
Did you have
Okay.
to take him back to the Humane Society?
We have to for checkups. They won't adopt him until he's been neutered, and so that's like at 4 or 6 months. And so every so often we have to go in to have his shots and his health checked out to prove that we're taking care of him and all that. So I donated money to the place already. I think they're pretty straightforward on taking care of animals. And it's the one up in Frankfurt, Clinton County Humane Society, and they have a lot of volunteers and they have a lot of animals, so they're doing good service to the community there. Okay, so it's just a bit of a run to try to get there from here. So we got chapter 8, and it's talking about starting from what's most important, working your way through, and really the schedule to make sure that you are where you're supposed to be is most important. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right screen. Screen number 2 is what I wanted. So having this dispatch list or the shipping schedule about what truck is going to be at what door, when it's going to have to be loaded, all of that's important. So you can prioritize where your resources need to be and you don't waste that space. But if you got trucks waiting out there to come into your warehouse, your distribution center, you're probably going to be paying significant fines every 15 minutes for keeping that truck from going on to its next destination. So you tell what trailer goes to what door, and all of the orders or the pick orders that are going to go along with that trailer, all the paperwork that has to go with making sure that the right stuff gets put in it. Any special shipping out of the norm, like it needs to be refrigerated, or there's some special handling or a special destination. And then, of course, you've got these express pickups, which are usually under 150 pounds. There is exceptions, but when FedEx, UPS, and all their ground and air freight type folks, they get more involved in the 150 pound or less small package part of shipping. So here's our shipping manifest that we're hearing about from our exercise. And it's basically there's digital ones, and that can be assigned like a barcode that has everything that's in that manifest. And so it can just be a quick scan, and they know everything that's on a truck or everything that's on a pallet or an airplane. Depending on what the size of the company is it's handling, it could be in paper where you have to actually go through and put stickers that match the manifest. But manual ones, it's usually a little bit smaller. And I actually had a student tell me, they're working at one of these smaller setups. They got hired because of their penmanship, that they could write plain. And so people could understand what they were putting on documents. Wow. So thank your first or second grade teacher who taught you how to print, that's how that person got the job. And on that subject, I also seen one of my graduates from this year. Chris went to the graduation. My daughter's one and only concert for band for the entire year was on the same night that our graduation was. So I asked ahead of time if I could, see that instead of coming to the graduation, and they let me. But I actually saw 2 of my students at this concert, and one of them was telling me about her fabulous new $70,000 a year job. And so it's all she has is what you folks are working towards is the certificate. And her employer is going to pay her to finish the associate degree. And then they have help for them to go on to do the bachelor degree if they want to. So employers really are in search of people who will come to work, because that's most important about our job is you have to be at the right place at the right time to get people's goods and services to the right place at the right time. But if you've got a good attendance habits and you've got these certifications that show that you have an understanding of our industry, there is a multitude of offers out there. There's one I'm going to post in our announcements today. It's another offer from Eli Lilly. They want folks to come and do internships with them. But we probably have 24 companies right now asking for employees. They're saying, are they about ready to graduate? They're looking for our seniors. And then they say, what about some promising prospects that are just in classes right now and not finished? We'll take them too. So they're desperately seeking their next full-time hire. And we're just trying to get you where you can demand more money when that conversation takes place.
I
So-
got 2 internship offers
Oh,
from
wow.
just this class, like the stuff that I've learned so far.
Wow, that's great. And they do watch, out at MSSC, every time there was a semester, like 8-week finish of a class, and then the second 8 weeks, employers go out there to see who all have new credentials, and they contact you. They send you emails saying, hey, we see that you just got your CLT or CLA. Would you like to tour our operations and see if there's something that you'd like to do with us? I mean, they are pretty outgoing when it comes to finding people with qualifications. Okay, so we got our manifest, and here it says it's a handwritten list. So that's why, of course, my student got the job. They knew what they were doing, of course, but they have them actually write out like a paragraph, and they see what their printing's like. So they talked about the 2-part labels, and then they have handheld manifests that have barcode stickers, and they got handheld scanners. They got ones that go on their fingers, all this kind of stuff too. But when they're coming up with this, besides having this list of items on there, we also have to have a kind of an estimate on what each one of those items weigh. Because, like an airplane has a weight restriction. They can't get off the ground if they've got too much on there. Truck trailers have weight restrictions. Even rail cars, even though it's 3 to 5 times more than a truck, has weight restrictions. And so this is important that they have at least an estimate on what those items on that list would weigh. And so we have the shipping order, and that's when we actually, as a customer, tell them what we want and how we want it sent to us. So if we say, yeah, it can take 2 weeks, then it's probably going to be cheaper to have it shipped to you because you didn't want it overnight right now. And they can take advantage of less than truckloads and less than cargo container loads, and they can get that to you relatively inexpensive if time is not an issue. And so once they get your order and how quick you need it, then they start making arrangements on how they're going to ship it, and they give you an estimate of when it will arrive. We talked about this before. When it says bill, carrier freight bill, they're expecting some kind of payment when they hand you one of these. It's a bill. And so it's an invoice that it gives to the consignee, or the carrier gives to you, stating they need paid for their services. So you may already own whatever was sent. Say it was something from another one of your plants or another warehouse. The cargo on that trailer belongs to you, so you're not paying for it, but you're paying for the transportation of getting it to you. In some cases, the carriers collect for the cargo too. So if you had a truckload of auto parts, and they would say, okay, that'll be $300,000, plus the $300 for shipping. So the carrier freight bill can also include requests for payment for the freight besides the transportation of it. The delivery receipt, we've talked about this before. It could be a post note. as long as it has pertinent information about who was delivered by and who was delivered to. And most of the times when it's important is when you're going to note things that weren't right about the shipment. It was damaged or there was things shorted. And so this gives you a communication or a receipt to show it's not as promised. And so then you can go back to renegotiate a different amount on the bill that you pay. And it's also what your drivers use to prove that they have delivered. So it's a proof of delivery. Bills of lading, documents used for carriers and shipping department that tells that they are on board a ship or a trailer or a rail car. And it lets them, it involves if it's coming from a ship or a rail car. This would also go through to the truck that actually delivers it to you. So it can use these different modes of transportation when you have all that information listed on the bill of lading. So the next important thing after you've got the schedule for when the trailer is supposed to be there or when it leaves, and you've got a list of everything that's on that trailer or on that ship or rail car, is the routing, how it's going to get there. So of course, when we talk about how much you're going to get charged for that service, there's some important things like how far it's got to go. Do I have to pay for two drivers? If it's going to go farther than a certain amount of miles, then either I have to add a day so the driver can get the rest, or I have to put it on a two driver team. If it needs special care, if it's fragile, if it's got some type of rating, like it needs to be refrigerated, or it has to stay completely dry and no vibrations, you know, there's different handling, fragile handling procedures that would add to the cost of, or where you're going to route. If I know that there's a lot of construction going on, say in the northern split of 465, and there could be chuck holes and potholes and all this, I might take a state road or a county road to bypass that construction area. So we got the distance, customer requirements, driver availability, and then there's some restrictions in some states that don't let them take the larger trailers, the 55-foot trailers. And it really does come to bear in Indiana with all these roundabouts that we have. If anybody's been behind a truck that's trying to negotiate that roundabout and they have a 55-foot trailer, you know that it's the longer trailer, because it's up on the sidewalks, it's in the center. I mean, it's just trying to negotiate that turn, that circle with 55-foot plus the length of the truck. So they're trying to probably turn 80 foot around a circle that's designed for a 12-foot vehicle. So the regulations, we talked briefly about those in our previous chapters. This one is talking about hazmat, which was just recently, we went over that in chapter 6. And it talks about the placards that have to be on vehicles that are transporting it. And there's actually routes that you can go on, and there's routes that you can't go on. So if you go through a densely populated area, say a city, you're not allowed to take hazardous cargo through there on your way somewhere. The only way that you can be within a city limit, say within 465, the circle, is if you are delivering to an address that's in those city limits. And so if you're getting fuel or rest or repairs, normally that's outside of the city limits. They have them at truck stops on the interstate, so you don't have to be in an urban environment. But if you were, say, headed towards a delivery, you had a blowout, then you could seek, you know, some type of repair or assistance that way. But you're not going to buy fuel in downtown Indianapolis for a semi truck. There's no place to buy it because they want to keep that type of traffic out of city streets. So your routing has got to be, usually it's got to be pre-approved to make sure that you're not going to take this into an area like a wetland or something, that if you spilled it, you could wipe out all the geese or something. So they give you the predetermined route on how you have to go to deliver a hazardous cargo shipment. And we've got these different types of technologies that track where that trailer is. And this has a picture here, let me make it a little bit bigger, of a yard. And this is basically, it's got a set of rails coming in so trains can bring in containers. And then it's got trucks. And if you notice, there is like a rail that's under the truck. Some of these trucks are like, they just follow a rail. They don't need drivers. And then, of course, there's a ship that's off the picture here, or there's a rail car, a yard that's off the picture here, where all of these containers are either being offloaded or onloaded to go to the destination. And so this yard management, you know, making sure that there is a space that you can unload and load, and that there is trucks that are coming to pick it up or deliver it, and that there is a ship that's there to unload or to put the cargo on, is usually used by a software that can tell you available spaces. It brings in the schedule of when boats are supposed to be there and when trucks are supposed to be there, when trains. So all of that coordination, it used to be on a clipboard with a sharp pencil. And now there's tracking and management systems that try to make that manageable, because face it, when this was in its infancy, which was the science of supply chain has always been around, but when it became more of a global aspect was like in 1990. And since 1990, just if you look at what we purchased online, which was zero in 1990, and last year it was 50% of all transactions were online. And so now you have all that transportation for delivery and everything, all the way down to the customer that wasn't even part of our industry in 1990. So yeah, all of this traffic and everything is quadrupled times 10. And so we had to adapt with software to take care of that. So it's basically being like an air traffic controller for containers on the ground. And there is a lot of opportunities for people that have that kind of attention to detail to find a niche that they can do in this particular area. So they have to have folks that, besides are saying, hey, move your truck over to lot 100, parking lot 100 and slot number D. They also have to have folks who handle all the paperwork to make sure that it's been inspected, that it's not hazardous material, that it doesn't need special handling, like if it's a refrigeration trailer, is there still going to be some fuel source to make sure that the reefer, it's got like a gas generator that makes the refrigeration, or a diesel generator. So they have to go around and refuel all of those trailers periodically to make sure that until they're unloaded, that the cargo is taken care of in there. And that's on direct refrigeration. They have indirect refrigeration where the trailer is sealed with dry ice, or they have these gel packs that they can freeze and they last up to 3 days and keep it at the same temperature. That's some of the stuff I brought from the transportation class that is finished. But it's interesting how they have an active refrigeration and an inactive refrigeration alternative. So you got your documentation. Of course, these staging areas where they bring them in or they send them out also help on the security and accountability. At any time, they should know how many trucks are in that area and when they need to leave, and how many are coming into the area when they need to arrive. So all those tracking systems keep a continuous flow in a perfect day. But weather could delay things showing up, or they could delay you getting them unload, power outages, truck accidents. I mean, there's 100 things that could interrupt a perfect day of scheduling, and they happen every day. They're interrupted. So you have to have people that can think on their feet and that can make adjustments on how they want to keep that flow going. So this talks about the driver having the CV there, plus they got onboard computers. And for most of the big trucking companies, now that they've automated the driving logs that tell how many hours you've been operating, how many you've rested, or how many that you've waited for a load to be offloaded. If you're getting close to exceeding the amount of hours you're supposed to be able to drive, they will send you a text, or you'll get like a voicemail or something that says the truck will be shut down in 15 minutes. Find a exit and find a place to take your rest. And so they can remotely shut down a truck. They just make sure that it's not in traffic, you know, downtown or something, or in the middle of an interstate, but just to make sure that they stay within those confines and when it can operate. If the driver's not aware that they're getting close to maxing out their driving hours, then whoever's handling the routing and the traffic will shut them down. That's Big Brother, big time. So it talks about how they track these, and it's usually through the RFID tags that are assigned to the containers. But the trucks all have satellite linkage back to their home companies, and so they can communicate with their drivers and know if the truck's being driving too fast or too recklessly. They can also tell if the truck needs service. All of that stuff is linked into the software for transportation management. So when we looked at this intermodal transportation, this picture shows us 40-foot containers. There's two of them up there. It says Hamburg, Sud. And then there's two 20-foot containers below. And so this shows how why really they have the 20-foot and the 40-foot is they can lock them together when they get them on like a train or they get them on a ship. It's still space that can be utilized with the 20 foots or the 40 foots. And so that's the two major sizes that are used for international. They do have a 45-foot container, but that's normally just for domestic type of travel. When you're trying to put a container ship together, it's a big Lego, and they want to make sure that it's either 20 foot or 40 foot so they all stack up. These ISO containers, they mentioned 53 foot here. That's a trailer link that's on, you know, or we talked about that's the longest trailer you can drive in the US. You can't drive that length of trailer in Europe or other places around the world. So that's usually just domestic size, stateside type length on those.
Also, you can't double stack them out there too as well, right?
No, 53 foot can't double stack. And in Europe, you're right, they don't, their rail systems aren't set up to do a double stack. They can only do single. So, and remember the TEU is a 20-foot equivalent unit and an FEU is a 40-foot equivalent unit. So anytime you have the FEU, it's 2 times what the 20-foot would be. It holds twice as much. And if they have a question where they say you have 2 40-foot containers, how many 20-foot containers would it take to haul that? Then you're going to multiply by 2 because it's going to take twice as many containers. So 20 foot and 40 foot is all you got to remember there. It's what the equivalency is on this. This is a swap body. And so when you got containers and they're on like a rail car or a ship, like that skeletal, it's similar to that. It lets you take the container. If you notice at the bottom, there are no wheels. There's no axles under that swap body. It basically just has legs that can pop up to keep it at the height of the dock so they can unload it. So these are transported around either with a large lift or with a flatbed truck. And so these containers, this is what they look like when they're getting unloaded. Some trailers are unaccompanied, where they could be connected to a truck that runs on a rail or it's setting on a ship. And so it really doesn't need a driver. And this picture here shows one of these road railers. It's a truck that actually can drive on pavement or it could run on a rail. And if you look, it's got this heavy duty suspension that has the train wheels that hydraulically can raise up or lower down. And so they can move loads between, in a train yard, they can move these different containers around from one train to another by using these trucks that are equipped to run on tracks. They wouldn't take this cross country, you know, on a rail track. It's just basically used to manipulate cars around to connect them to other trains or to actually deliver that container from a rail yard over to a dock of some kind. And here's a picture of our gantry crane. These are port side. They're setting on a port where you can actually lift containers and drop them onto a train or truck. And these cranes can either be stationary or they can move forward and backwards based on how big the ship is and how far away they have to reach out from the port to pick it up. Grappler lift, it says it's similar to a gantry, but it has fitted with to handle swap bodies. So it's going to have these clips that hoist in, go into the hoist. And so it's easier to grab a hold of the bottom of them, you know, these little handle areas here. These grappling lifts are specifically designed to connect to those types of trailers. This reach stacker, it's a forklift. It's huge. And I don't think we have a picture, either it was in a previous one or here we go. It can pick up an entire truck load by itself. And so if you're stacking containers, say in a storage yard that are coming off of a train or they're coming off of the trucks or a ship, this is the piece of equipment that they can individually go in there and get one container, say it's a high priority, it's got medical supplies or something like that. They can go in there on a 2,000 container ship, identify that container, use this piece of equipment to take it off of the dock and deliver it to a trailer bed or a rail car to get it onto the next spot it's supposed to be.
Does it have a weight load? Like
it does, similar to depending on what model it is. It's very similar because some of these could be just classified for 20-foot containers, and then the maximum something like 30,000 pounds. But if it had the capacity for a 53-foot container, it'd have to be a much bigger setup here. It'd have dual wheels on the front and back. So it doesn't ask about that. It just wants you to know that there is a lift truck called a reach stacker that they can actually move containers with. And this grappling lift, it's poorly lidded, this picture is, and it's probably tough to see it, but it actually has the connectors at the bottom. Each time they go down, they go under the containers that are designed for it to pick up. Okay. Skeletal trailer, we talked about that on the little example exercise we did, and it basically extends or contracts down the whole any size of ISO container. I think it does show one here.
So maybe I have a question about transtainers and gantry. It looks like when I read transtainers, as if like they are describing the picture of gantry crane on the other page.
Well, this on a gantry crane, it's based on its ability to lift loads and move. This one, I don't know. It's a poor picture, but there's probably rails. It's not a fixed position, and the operator is in this small booth here, and the operator moves with the load, and so. The gantry crane is a much bigger setup, and for the most part, they're either built inside a building where they can have stronger support on one wall or the other, or they're on a port on a dock where they can have a stronger setup than these smaller grappler lifts. This could be portable and it could actually drive over a truck or a rail car to pick stuff up, whereas the gantry crane's not that portable. It either has to be on a track or it has to be connected to a wall of a warehouse or something of that nature. So when you're asked about those two, they really look at the components of it. That they describe the over beam, and they describe the actual crane itself, the lift. And so it would say it have a special attachment like a grapple. I don't know if we can see that one or not, but that's used for eaches. On that gantry crane, you could pick up 6 or 8 containers at the same time. I mean, it's heavy duty. And it has counterweights just like on the different types of lift trucks. Whereas you see on this gantry, there's no, or this grappler, there's no counterweights on it anywhere. So we got this skeletal trailer. And I think they do show a quick picture of that one. The container ships, we spoke a little bit about those in the chapter on transportation. It's where they actually stack them, and some of these can go as high as 10 high, the containers. So each one of those are 8.5 foot tall. You're going to have like a 10-story building tall in containers on these container ships. We spoke about this roll-on, roll-off barrier, or row-rows. That's where a truck fully loaded drives up on a ship. It takes it across the body of water and it lets it off the other end. They do that with trains too. So the freight actually has drivers that take their trucks or their trains onto the boat, and then when it gets to the other end, they drive them off. Barges can be row-rows, and they have used this, say you've got those huge ship containers and they can't get to the port because they're so big and deep, the port's shallow. They use these barges where they can actually offload the containers onto barges, and then they take them in from there. And it's usually for just short distances because they move so slow. But if you had, say, a harvest of corn or soybeans, or you're shipping coal, and you've got several weeks before it has to be from like Mississippi to Indiana or vice versa, then they do these river barges. The bad part about it is you have to live along a navigable river, and it has to be when that river's not frozen. So there's a lot of things that can affect how accurate you can predict when that will be shipped.
I've seen a river barge in Cincinnati before. Really cool the way they transport all those heavy goods down the river.
Yeah, my sister-in-law basically is the operations manager for the port in Evansville, and all they deal with is these barges, and some of the stuff that they haul on barges, it's incredible. They make molasses, and the byproducts of molasses becomes components for pet food and fish food and fillers for, except for human consumption, all kinds of things. And they send barge loads. I mean, a barge holds like 10 trucks, barge loads of this molasses byproduct. And where they're loading it and unloading it from this port, they're putting it on trucks or they're putting it in containers. The stuff fell in the river there. And people come from all around different states to go catfishing from that port, from that dock, because the catfish are over there eating this these byproducts that fall off of the barges when they're unload them and load them, and they're huge. I mean, like they're cracking 70 and 80 pounds a catfish. So yeah, that's the barges when they're uncovered like that. There's a chance of spilling and stuff blowing over, so they're not your preferred method modem moving. It's got to be something that's big bulk and it's low value for those to really work. So we got double stacking, talks about that working here, not so much in Europe. And everything now falls under Department of Homeland Security, all the customs and all the tariffs, all the border and everything, all falls under one entity. And so before each one of those, like the anything that had to do with customs as far as tariffs or taxes, that was owned and operated by the Department of Treasury. And so when they went through and reorganized after 9/11, all these different agencies, they kind of just put everybody under the same tent that had anything to do with the borders. So we got Customs and Border Protection now are responsible for enforcing the laws on incoming or outgoing, collecting taxes on tariffs, and anything that has to do with who we deal with. The only time the State Department gets involved is if we are trading firearms or ammunition. And so they want to make sure we're not giving weapons to the bad guys. And that if we are selling any of our arms or ammunition to allies that, hopefully won't be using them on us in the future. Drug enforcement, DEA, we hear that in all the bad boys stuff. They take care of making sure controlled substances and illicit drugs don't come into the country. Food and Drug Administration, they are responsible for all the pharmaceuticals. We hear about the FDA all the time now, and with the shots that we're getting for immunizations. So the FDA is responsible for making sure that none of that stuff is harmful in our food or animal feed, cosmetics, anything that has to do with health and safety. They're the folks who are, and supposedly that prior to this last pandemic breakout, or the one that's been in our lifetime, it's taken the quickest 5 years to get a drug through all the tests and getting it adapted. So this one was fast forwarded because of the urgency and the loss of lives that would result. It took 5 years for us to get something out there to fight this pandemic. And now they're finding out that they can cut through a lot of bureaucracy and red tape, and they can actually deliver. This one took like 6 months compared to 5 years. And so if we got a cold medicine that's supposed to keep you from sniffling, that's not life-threatening. It shouldn't take 5 years for that to move its way through a process. If something that is so life-threatening as a pandemic, we can get something done in 6 months or less. So there's a lot of bureaucrats there that will be happy that they have to do things faster, but now there's an expectation that they would. We talked about World Trade Organization in our exercise. 153 member countries have 95% of the total world trade. And so there's only like 160 countries recognized. So there's only 7 countries that aren't part of this. And it's by their choice because everyone is invited to it. And it's where you go if you're saying, hey, China just cheated me out of this deal. And we go there a lot of the times talking about how China takes trade secrets, or they take our stuff that's supposed to be copyright protected, and they'll reverse engineer it, and they'll make it without all of the money we've just spent on research and development, making mistakes, paying for that mistake, and then trying it again over and over. Like in pharmaceutical, 96% of the time, whatever the experiment was, it's a failure. And so they spend billions of dollars with only having like 3 or 4% of their research turn into something useful. And then a foreign country, this is not blame China, there's other folks that do it too. They steal our formulas, or they steal our recipes on how we put together this, say, a vaccine. And taxpayers in this last case spent hundreds of billions of dollars to develop it that fast. and now it's being stolen from us. So we don't want to keep something like life-saving vaccines from the rest of the world. That's not what I'm saying, that we should be charging these people, hey, if you want to live, then pay us. That's extortion. But what I'm saying is that's just an example of everyday things that happen where we have to go to the World Trade Organization and say, they're not playing fair. They've got the ability to research and develop this process, not on vaccines, but let's just say if it was some type of solar panel or something, and they stole all of our ideals and all of our patents. They're supposed to go back and say, well, you folks need to pay them, or you need to return or agree not to produce their copywritten, licensed, but that's not happening, not when it comes to China. They are the biggest violators of that. So that's where we have a rub with them, is they're not playing fair when it comes to trade or trade secrets. They're not playing by the rules.
So they're basically like a mediator.
Yeah. And there's supposed to be some teeth in it, like they can fine them or they can shut down. They won't allow them to trade with other countries, but that never happened. And just some of the press that comes out of that organization is so pro-China. It's propaganda that they're talking about how great China has been. It's telling us that's been infiltrated, and it's not really a fair judge type of thing that you can take your cases to. So that's why there's a lot of unhappy customers. The U.S. being the largest unhappy customer with that organization. We set it up, and then that's how it turned out. It turned out against us. So trade regulations, we've got international traffic and arms regulation. There's some places that you can't sell arms or chemicals or explosives to if they are classified as a terroristic nation or a supporter of terror. They're on the terror list. And there's been some changes since the election where countries that were classified that we couldn't do let them export or importing have been taken off of that list. And so they do so at our peril. Because now here's a known country that is associated with causing harm to U.S. interests and U.S. soldiers that we've just given the green light that they can buy our own weapons and ammunition. So that's something that we're being irresponsible when they do things of that nature. Container initiative, we already talked about that, where we've got video or camera shots of that container being loaded, and then as it's sealed, it shows that particular seal number that's 20 or 30 digits long was put on that container. And inside that container, we have all of these different type of sensors that can tell if it stops, if it's dropped, if it's in cold, or if it's opened. And it lets us know in real time, hey, your container was just stolen and it's now on its way here. And so security-wise, this container security initiative not only puts the responsibility of who's loading that container in whatever country to make sure that it's loaded securely and that it's monitored, but it now lets us know until it gets to the customer, the receiving customer, where that container's been and who's touched it, and if there's been anything that's been damaged, stolen, or what have you. This is voluntary. So the big pluses are, if you are participating in this, then you get waived through customs, and because you have been doing business, several years or whatever, and you have already sent forward your manifest and the links to the video and all the reports about the sensors if nothing's been messed with. So this is a trusted container, supposedly, if you were a part of this voluntary program. If you're not, then that's where with all these different countries put their emphasis is on checking that container that's not part of this security initiative. And so you will want to become a part of the security initiative if you've ever had your containers put in a back lot and ignored for a couple of weeks until they get to you, because there's a high volume of movement and so few people to inspect it, that your delays whatever's on there could actually go bad. It could expire, or your customer, because it was 2 weeks late, went somewhere else and bought the same product, and now you're stuck with it. So there is some incentives to be a part of this security initiative. Advanced manifestation, and depending on what country that you're dealing with, there's different requirements for you sending the automated list of everything that's on your ship or your plane. If it's domestic, then there's set standards and times that you electronically send what's on trailers or trains or ships or aircraft if it's going from state to state. But for the most part, this is set up for doing international type of trade, and it lets us know, hey, we've got this shipload of beef that's coming in that, it's refrigerated, but we need to make that an expedited inspection because it's perishable. And they're part of our container security initiative. We know it's beef in there, but because we got this advanced manifest, then we know that that particular container needs to have a priority on moving through customs. Our free trade agreements, NAFTA, now it's been upgraded. The documentations, for the most part, there's a conversional invoice that lists everything that's coming from the country, and the country of origin has to be listed because we were getting items from North Korea via Vietnam or Malaysia, and we have these sanctions, if you want to call them. We're punishing North Korea for its activity on nuclear development and all this kind of stuff, and so we won't do business with them. So that's why you have to have the country of origin to show that, no, we didn't get these nails or something simple like that from North Korea. They were actually made in Vietnam or Malaysia or China or whatever. So and you want to go back and hold that country responsible, say if they send something that's lead paint, or it's something that's caused injuries in automobile manufacturing or kids' toys or clothing or whatever. It's making sure that that country is responsible for the quality of items that it exports. And there's usually some kind of a taxation, a tariff or something that's involved in it. And so having the original country would tell us what our trading policies are with that country. License, the United States doesn't require, this is a question on the test, doesn't require a license to import goods except for, those controlled items, firearms, pharmaceuticals, things of that nature. However, the U.S. does require an export license. So I can still remember one of those what the heck is going on here moments when the Clinton administration authorized the sale of IBM, our computer, the fundamental computer manufacturer for the Department of Defense. China bought it back in the 90s. And with that, they also got the programs and the diagrams and everything of all of our nuclear warhead guidance systems. And so in selling a country, one of our companies, they got access to sensitive defense materials. And so that's why one of those reasons in this import-export licensing, they want to find out, is this something that is national defense? Are they allowed to do this? What kind of risks are involved in this company doing trade with their customer? So yeah, we can do stupid sometimes, just crazily, but and I don't like to bring politics into the classroom. that's your folks' choice to who you think does what. But historical instances that have to do with what we're talking about, I'm trying to show you how badly that can go or how it's supposed to go. So we got the certificate of origin. And it basically, it's telling if it's taking different types of components from different countries, the one country that assembles it is basically who's going to take the responsibility for it. If it's more than a percentage, say 60% of the assembly was done in Mexico, are we still going to call those Chevrolet trucks made in America? Because 60%, and the final assembly is done in Mexico. So is it a truck made in Mexico or is it a truck made in the US? Well, according to our NAFTA agreements, they can say it was made in the US. And the new changes, when we talk about the difference between NAFTA and the Mexico-Canadian agreement, is no, you can't. It's whatever percentage, if it breaks the 51%, then it's made in Mexico. And so now that's forcing manufacturers, or if the final assembly, if they put all those parts together, if they're just assembling and they didn't make any of the parts they just put together, is assembled in Mexico, it's made in Mexico. So now these manufacturers who've been gaming the system to not pay tariffs and imports and all that, now they're going to have to play fair because there's US manufacturing and jobs that are being sent to other countries, and they were getting credit, those companies were, for employing US labor when they said made in the US, and they weren't employing US labor. So yeah, that was a major upgrade in NAFTA to Mexican-Canadian agreement. Okay, insurance. If you're doing international, almost all shipments, I missed this one on the test. I said should insure 100%. No, they say you should insure 120%. But I just took my exam for transportation. So the 20% is the cost of loss, you know, administrative fees and replacement fees. So if something was worth $100 and you sent it to Japan, the cost to get a second shipment to your customer is going to be another 25% more. Even though they pay you back, here's your $100 for what we lost, because you got to send another shipment, you got to pay all the transportation costs and all that stuff associated with it. So whatever the value is plus 25%, I got wrong. I just said 100%. That's the one I missed. So we have to have the insurance documentation to make sure that it's a real insurance company. And so there is like an international resource that you can buy insurance from, or you can see what their ratings are, if they do customer service or if they're not very good. Okay, so I think we're closing up chapter 8.
Is there a lot of fraud associated with the insurance when you do that?
There, I mean, it's wanting you to be on your toes, because there can be stuff that looks legitimate and it's not. You know, they could have a name that sounds like the same as a bigger company, and they've just stole their colors for their logos and all this stuff. It's just like yesterday. My wife went out on Neighborhood or whatever that thing is and found somebody who does tree trimming. We got a tree limb that's very close to our roof line. And so this guy shows up after being lost for about 4 hours, missing our place. I don't know, GPS it right to it. And then he looked at it and he gave us this estimate that was probably a third of what any other estimate I've ever had. And so you got to question, why is this person so cheap? You know, what you get what you pay for, right? So like $1,000 is what these folks before had, you know, that were quality tree removal folks. And this guy just said, oh, I'll do it for 300. And so first thing my wife asked me, says, well, are you bonded and insured? And he said, yeah. And he gives us the name like Dunn Insurance or something like, well, we'd like to see, more evidence that you are, because this is hanging over our house. And if this tree hits our house, then we want to make sure that there's insurance to repair it. So, nobody's coming near our house with a chainsaw unless they are bonded and insured. But that's what's one of those things you really do need to do your research to make sure that your risk is mitigated as low as it can be.
That's why comes the emphasis or the importance of the forwarders or brokers. Yeah.
Yeah, you're so right there, because they've done business in that country and they know who the right insurance folks are, who the right transporter by rail or ship or truck. It's just basically having somebody who knows how to do business in that part of the world represent you. And then based on what this freight forwarder's reputation is and how, because they get a report card, just like trucking companies and aircraft, they know how many shipments got to where they were supposed to be in perfect condition, how many claims have been against them, if they were on time, how much their cost, if they charge, say, $100 per ton based on other people, how cost effective they are on what they charge. So you can get all of that information on any of those freight forwarders, but that's sort of like the package deal. They take care of all the documentation. They take care of all the insurances. And if you have to have some kind of, in some places, excuse me, you have to go to a bank in that country and say, I'm insuring this $100,000 container for whatever their currency is equivalent to. And so freight forwarder takes care of all of that crazy stuff that would be very time consuming and costly. And since they do 100 transactions a day, your one transaction might take you a month to figure out. These freight forwarders do 100 of them a day. It takes them 20 minutes to say, here, you're done. And so just the time and the effort and the money you save and going with somebody, you're saving money. It's cheaper than you could do it yourself. So, and that's another one of those areas in our field that's wide open. I see all kinds of requests for workers in that particular area. Freight forwarding is a big one. Okay, so we're on to chapter 9, and I think that you're going to be pretty confident I'm doing well in this, because it's straightforward. It's just got a couple pictures I wanted to share with you of the equipment that they use for measuring and for weighing. And so this chapter is measurement and conversion. So on the first part, on the measurement side, it's talking about different types of scales that we have. And some of them are designed for less than 150 pounds. And that's for like single packages. And that's how they can determine freight charges and making sure that whatever their container they're putting it in or their truck they're putting in is not overweight. And sometimes you are buying things by weight. And so if you're buying bulk items, say sand or salt or whatever, you're paying by the pound. So you need to have these different types. They're classified as bench scales. And so it'll allow you to set a container of some type on it. Then they have this other scale. It's a that actually lifts to a hoist, and then the readout of the weight is on it. So you can pick up things like a container. Everything that's in that container will be weighed. You can pick up a pallet. You can pick up a truck with this thing. For things that make it a little bit easier, so you don't have to hook something up and then worry about it being dropped on the floor, they have floor scales. And this is probably the highest used one for anything above 500 pounds. If you go to a truck stop or you see those weigh stations when you're on your interstates, those have floor scales, so they have scales that the trucks drive onto, and then they just continue going. But these are very sophisticated, and we got a picture of one here. It looks like it's like a black mat of some kind, but they're very useful because they, instead of counting every little item on a pallet or in a load, if I know that each one of these widgets weighs 1 pound, and then I put them on this scale and it weighs 1,000 pounds, I know I have 1,000 widgets. And so it takes a lot of the guesswork about how many nuts and bolts would be in this big, huge box. It goes by weight. They weigh one, and then they know how many eaches there would be in that total weight. So they have counting scales that they can enter in what's the one way, and then when they set the pallet on there or the container, it'll tell them how many of that nut or bolt or light bulb, whatever it is, are in that container. So besides weight-based, they can also do what they call measuring by volume. And this is what is used for most trucking companies as they first get an idea of how much will fit in a trailer. And then they can kind of get a guesstimate at how much it weighs. And the same thing works with aircraft, is they do a height, width, and length. They get a volume measurement, and that gives them some type of a estimate on what the weight would be. And so the simple math on this is height times width times length. And so when you're going to have a question on the certification that's going to give you this, and I think it was something like 10 was in all of those. And so it's like you have a crate and it's the height's 10, it'll have a 10 over here, height 10, it'll have a 10 for width, and it'll have a 10 for length. And it'll say, what's the volume of that box? And so you go 10 times 10, 100, times 10, 1,000, right? And so it'll have multiple choice, all your questions are multiple choice, and it'll give you 1,000 to select from. So we have technology that actually has like a scanner that when this box comes down a conveyor of some type, then a light will go across and measure the width and the length and the depth of that box. And they can figure out each one of those boxes. And I'm talking, they're going through their 2 or 3 boxes per second. And they can tell what the volume is and how much trailer space is still left. And so let's say you had 10 doors that were loading trucks to go to the same place. Then one of the trucks would get a lot of large boxes, and then the next one would get a lot of large boxes, and they kind of divide it out where they have smaller boxes to keep those large boxes from moving around. And the large boxes take it, you know, they would fill up that trailer faster, and so they could get that trailer, the truck gone. If you got small boxes, say you have 500 big boxes, you probably have, you know, 3,000 small boxes, and each one of those would probably have to be hand handled instead of using any kind of equipment with it. So this basically has, the chapter has your standard and US measurements. And we are so hardcore in the US about sticking to our guns, about staying with our standard measurements. We don't want to convert to metric. And I can tell you that I graduated in '77, and they were just talking about teaching the metric system in school when I was graduating. And so my children were taught the metric system in school, but I had to learn the hard way teaching myself. And so when I was preparing for this, I was really apprehensive about how well I was going to do in this chapter, since I taught myself the metric system. And come to find out, it really wasn't about memorizing all these different units and conversions. So I got over, and you will too, that you don't have to remember all of those conversions. It wants you to be familiar, like to know that 12 inches equals a foot. I think you know that already. But to know what that converts to in meters. knowing how to find it is what's really important. And when you do any of these tests, they're going to actually show you the equivalencies. They're going to be a chart just like this that tells you what inches are equivalent to meters, centimeters, millimeters, whatever the question's asking for. It'll have the two different conversions on there. You just have to pick which way to go based on how the question's asked. And so this has got the standard metric measurements. And the great thing about metric is you just add a 0. It's all units of 10. And it just makes perfect sense that it just makes the measurements just make so much more sense than the craziness that we come up with. Just look at lengths, like 10 meters equal a centimeter, 100 centimeters equal a meter, 1,000 meters equals a kilometer. So all of those are just adding as times 10. You look at our stuff on length. Well, we got 12 inches equals a foot. 3 foot, it's not 10 or anything, equals a yard. And then we got this wacky one, 500 or 5,280 foot equal a mile. So if we get, say, anything above a yard, say I want to put 1,000 yards of something on order, and my next unit of measure is mile after yard, you're going to have some big numbers in there, where if we were using metric, it'd be like 2 kilometers instead of 15,450 yards. So it is kind of crazy because there's US and 2 other island countries. They're small little countries that do business using the standard unit of measure. The rest of the world, the entire planet, uses the metric system, except the US and these 2 small island nations. I think Malaysia was one of them. I keep bringing them up, but they're one of them that stuck with the standard system. So what kind of savings could we have if we were all using the same language when it came to sizes and weights and dimensions? It would be enormous. They consider it a whole other economy of a country could be saved if we all converted to metric. But the US is held back, saying, look, we've got all of our industry, all of our machines, all of our automobiles, all of our road signage, everything is using standard measurements. And the cost for us, because we're the only country that would have to convert it, would be too big for us to absorb. So instead, every other country on the planet has to incorporate standard measurements into their processes, into their mileage, into their documents, into their signage. It's ridiculous. So hopefully in your generation, we get this straight where everybody's on the same sheet of music and we come off of this inch, foot, yard, mile stuff, and we all speak the same language, because just the savings in manufacturing, in trade, in shipping, logistics, supply chain, storage, it would be astounding that we all could be on the same sheet of music. There'd be fewer mistakes in manufacturing. There'd be fewer mistakes in medicine. Just recently in Indianapolis, I saw this news story where an infant was overdosed with a blood thinning shot. They were born and they didn't get enough oxygen from their mother's placenta or something. And so they had to give them this shot that would actually cause their lungs and stuff to take in more oxygen. The nurse that gave the injection didn't know the conversion from ounces to the volume, the milliliters, and gave a adult dose to an infant, and so it killed him. And a second one happened at the same hospital the same day. So I mean, this is life and death stuff that we should all be on the same sheet of music. Since then, they've made color codes. It's for infants. They've got a different color syringe, you know, to try to make them quote unquote idiot proof. But if we had generations ago, you know, started talking the same language, we wouldn't have this situation. So that's something I hope your generation can cure. We failed to in mine, is get everybody on the same measuring sheet of music. And that's strange because music, it's international. There's no US version, or, you know, all the different timings and all the different keys and all the different flats and sharps. You know, I'm a musician. It's international. You can play any country's music if you can read music, but we can't tell them how much water to put in a drink for us, or, you know, it's just crazy. So the test is going to give you all of this information about converting millimeters to turn them into inches, meters to turn them into feet or yards, and kilometers to turn them into miles. I mean, even our speedometers, when I went to Europe, I took my own car. It was a 68 GTO. And I had to get like a little sticker to stick on my speedometer because speed limits in some places would be like 100 Ks an hour. And I'm thinking, woo, 100 miles an hour. No, that's 60 miles an hour. I got a couple speeding tickets over there from that. But then when you get out on the Autobahn, there's no speed limit. And so you could run the tires off your car, which I did about every 3 or 4 months. I was putting new tires on. US tires aren't made to go 120 miles an hour for 3 or 4 hours at a time. They overheat. Yeah, I had to buy European tires. But anyways, this conversion is given to you when you get to this part of the test.
You know, Tylenol, has anybody ever seen like the little infants Tylenol? It's the same exact dosage as children's liquid Tylenol, except for on the box, they don't put the dosage for the infants on the children's, but it's the same exact formula, same amount of medicine in there. But they do that because they charge more for a smaller amount of infants Tylenol versus children's Tylenol.
Yeah,
And
we learned that on our second kid.
Yes.
So it's a marketing ploy. You want to make sure your infant's taken care of, so buy 1 ounce instead of 10 ounces and pay the same.
Yep.
Yeah, I had to explain to my niece that when it says that diapers for 10 pounds, that's not how much they can absorb. That's the size of the person that's wearing it. Okay, so when you are taking this again, you're going to be asked, normally I think the questions are associated with the size of the pallet. They tell you what the dimensions are on it, and then they tell you, and it's in like standard, and then they'll have a shelf that's in metric. And then they'll say a lift has the capacity to pick up 3 tons, and they'll say that this container weighs so many kilotons or whatever. And see, I don't even remember what the damn terminology is, but it will have the equations in the question at the top, and there'll be a little calculator that you can actually do. Okay, that one I do 0.61 times, what was the miles? 25. And then it'll give you the answer that you get to pick from so this one I don't think is going to give you any headaches. Had somebody told me that all of this was going to be provided for me, I probably wouldn't have spent the amount of time I did. I made myself flashcards and all kinds of craziness trying to prepare to know all of these different metric terms and conversions. So you don't need to know that. That's going to be provided to you. But this chapter actually gives you all these charts for future use. And it lets you see just how loony our system is. We look at the measurement for liquids. It's got ounces, cups, pints, quarts, gallons, barrel, dry pint, dry quart, dry gallon, peck, bushel, cubic foot, cubic yard. Over here, it's all liters and cubic meters. So we go from milliliters to liters, and that's the only 2 ways that they measure using volume in the metric system. to like 15 different terminologies that you have to know what the sizes are if you use our US liquids. It's crazy. And that's just how stubborn we are. We know that we are the largest economy. We're the largest exporter besides China. And we have more trading partners, even more so than China does. And we're just saying, hey, if you want to do business with us, learn our measurements. And that's just crazy. It's we have still done that in the world global economy that we're in. So I have faith that you folks will fix that. Here's the temperatures for Fahrenheit and Celsius. I don't see Kelvin on here, but this is for force, for how much for lifting, and these newtons and pascals. That's what's used internationally for like cylinders and stuff to pick up bridges or truck lift and that kind of stuff. Temperatures, this is converting it back from Celsius to Fahrenheit and newtons to force pounds. So it doesn't ask any questions about force, or I think there's a couple temperature equations and then the volume questions. So after chapter 9, you have the glossary, just like we talked about with the CLA. This is a very useful part of your manual because I think this only is, what page are we on? We're on page 126 and it goes to 135, if that's not all glossary. I think it's only about 8 pages and there's like 6 or 8 terms on each one, maybe a few more on this larger one. But it started at 26. So this one is a quick review. You just read through these terms. Some of them you're going to know, but look at kitting. I mean, that's not something that's very used in your day-to-day language. And it's a process through which individual items are grouped or packaged to create a single shipment. So like batteries, manuals and stuff, everything that you would need to put something into operation gets put in this kit. Less than a truckload, you probably know that that means that it's less than, doesn't have enough weight or volume to fill up a trailer. A line, physical space of the manufacturer of a product that in a flow shop layout is represented by a straight line. In actuality, it might be a series of pieces of equipment connected by piping with conveyor. So if you have a production line, that's what they're talking about here, is that if you had an overhead schematic, it could be shaped like an S or a Z or whatever, but it's just a specific physical space that's assigned to manufacture a certain product. So if you've got your transmission line, then it's got all the components that are put together for a transmission. If you've got your light bulb line, then it's got all the components and machines associated with putting that together. But I had actual people miss that term, is why I'm bringing you back to that.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
When I was doing that interview this morning, they had this inside the factory. They had this giant wheel. It was about 8 feet wide, and they had one person on the one side and one person on the other side, and the wheel was clicking every like 20 seconds. So the person was doing the one part, and then the person on the opposite side of them was taking that part off, turning around and pushing it to the next line. What is that called?
Okay. Depending on like if there's 1 or 2 stations there, and when you take 201, which is the lean, it talks about the small little units of manufacturing that could be, I'm trying to think of the exact terminology. I had a bunch of stuff crammed in there today, but it's module basically manufacturing. And so it goes from one module to the next. And one of the first things you do in that class is make paper airplanes. And so they have you make the airplane by yourself, and you got like, say 60 seconds. And so you get maybe 2 of them done. And then they'll put you with a group of people and you say, okay, now all 4 of you make airplanes. And then you might make 8. But then if you put them in modules where the first step, the first person folds the paper in half, and then they push it over to the next person, and then that person folds the sides down, and they put it to the third person. They find that in the same amount of time, they can make like 3 times as many, mass produce 3 times as many paper airplanes. And so what they may not have showed you is that, say that table that they're putting the finished product, the part onto the next place, there could be like a color code that says red. That means don't send me any more. We've got enough stuff going on here. And then like 5 minutes could go by and then it'll turn green, and then they start sending the stuff forward. What that does is at the end, let's say if you were putting together 10 components to make, say, a lawnmower motor, at the end of the day, if you were just sending the stuff as it was made, you'd have all of these parts that didn't go to anything. They'd just be work in progress. They'd be inventory that was not used and could get damaged or lost or whatever. So let's say that they have a customer order for 50 lawnmowers. So you're only going to make 50 parts that day. And if that first station only takes 50 minutes to do it, they're done. They need to go do something else. Then the second station, they take, say, 2 hours to make 50 parts. When they're done, they're going to do something else. And that third station, maybe the final assembly, might take 30 minutes to put their part together. And so they're making 50 of them. They need 25 hours of labor. That's where all these other teams that aren't doing anything would come and take that number down. So yeah, it's like module assembly, and they will show you how that push or pull. That one sounds like a pull, like the person's making it and then they're pulling it off of that table to put it on another one. That's the sequence that they manufacture it. So take a look at this glossary, and we just went through. It started at, I think, 26 and it ended at 31. So you got 5 pages. That will be an easy review. When you're looking at chapter 9, most of the stuff's going to be available to you. I think the only thing they ask that's weird is about the different scales. And they'll say, like, what's the maximum weight that a bench scale can cover? And it's 500 pounds. But they don't get too deep into anything else on the scales. Chapter 8, we went over, is a lot about documentation and the sequence that takes place from scheduling the order to come in all the way through to its shipping out. And so you want to be able to visualize that. Chapter 7, if we go back on a quick look at what's going on there. There's also a link I have that's just a review for the CLT, and it's digital. You pull it up, and I actually went through and we opened up all these quizzes and we looked at the questions in it. So if you want to pull that one up, there's a link in our announcements that says CLT review, and you can actually see that. So we don't need to do that today. You can watch that to your leisure. Chapter 7 was the different transportation modes, and you had to decide if it was speed was the most important thing, or if volume, if you had a bunch of stuff, if it was something that needed to be put where there wasn't an airport, or there wasn't a rail car, or there wasn't a ship dock, then of course it's going to go by truck, which is 80% of everything. But you needed to know which one was the most expensive, which one was the fastest, which one's the slowest, which one's the least expensive. That's the kind of the gist of what you're looking at there. And then you're talking about multimodal. So which ones can you combine together? The truck can go with any of the other 3, but saying you're going to use air and rail might be a little bit of a tricky situation, but you could use air, truck takes it to rail, and then rail takes it somewhere else. But the international modes of transportation, there's no rails or roads going over oceans. So they're either going to be by water or air. Chapter 6, hazardous materials, talked about the different classifications of hazards. There's 9 of them. And you probably need to know what the signs look like. You know, if they're going to have a yellow with purple, or what's the fade, the purple color, it's the purple red, and then what the classifications mean. So you might want to review those. I gave you a quick guide for that. Inventory talks about first in, first out, last in, last out, and about making sure that it's just in time so you don't have a bunch of inventory that costs you if it expires or if your customers no longer want it. Packing and shipping, we did the egg drop. You want to try to avoid using too much packing material, and then we'll make sure that it's recyclable, that you don't use something that can't be used more than once. Cardboard is the most common packing material. It's about to be phased out with some type of a recyclable plastic that's more sanitary, lighter. It doesn't make boxes that have airspace in them. It just wraps to the size of the particular object, so more stuff can go in a truck. What else was in packing and shipping? The different primary container, which is the box that it's in, and then the secondary would be like a case that it gets loaded in, the individual items get loaded in. And then the third level would be how it's moved by material handlers on a pallet or in some type of a container, a bin or a barrel or something of that nature. Order processing, we talked about how you pick an order and go down different aisles to locate it, and then you deliver it to an outbound door. And product storage, we talked about taking items off of the inbound that comes to a receiving dock, and then how it's cataloged like a library where we put it on shelves or we put it in a bulk area, but we actually have software that tells us where that would be best located. And then when we need to go and find it again, it's in this same software, this warehouse management software, so we can go select that order and get it to our customer. This is where the majority of the labor and the costs are associated in our industry, is either product storage or product selecting. And so there's a lot of automation that's being applied to this to keep you from getting injured from picking things up or doing the same thing over and over again. And there's a lot of time saving that's occurring because 80% of the time it's going from your dock or wherever it needs to be shipped to the position in the warehouse where you select the order. And so to save that time, they have technology that brings that product to the person who's putting that order together. They don't have to go out in the warehouse and find it. The warehouse comes to them. And then we got product receiving, and that talked about, had the steps that you take whenever a truck's showing up at your door, and how you have to take an overlook of it to make sure it's not damaged. And then as you take it off, you're doing some type of an inventory quality check. And before you sign off, it says that it's good to go. Then you make sure there's no shortages or no damage to that load. So it's the people that have taken this and struggled with it have went to, like, say, the terms in the glossary and thought that's all that they were going to be asked. Whereas you're telling, when you earn this certification, you're telling a future employer that you have critical thinking skills, that you know enough about this process that you can make decisions for them that'll increase their safety, their efficiencies, their bottom line, their management of people and resources. So they ask questions that call on you to use critical thinking to make decisions about using people or using material handling equipment or safety, what type of decisions you would make in certain situations. So for some folks, it's kind of a challenge because they're used to studying A, okay, now I have recall of A. in this situation, you need to know how things are related and how one thing leads to the other, so you can make situational critical thinking decisions. And so those questions are written. Some people complain they're tricky, but really they're saying, here's the situation, future manager. What would you do to improve this situation? Or which one of these choices would you make that would reduce costs? Or which one would you make that would make safer working conditions? And so they're asking you to make management decisions. They're saying, hey, manager, here's the situation. What would you do? Instead of saying, hey, manager, define what this is. Seldom are you going to be on the job where they say, hey, I need you to define something for me. They need you to know what that definition of that term is and how it's used in our process. And so it might be somewhat challenging if you've never worked in supply chain or a warehouse, but if you've been a supervisor, you've had to make these critical decisions before. So I wouldn't really lose sleep over it. Of the people who take it, now I can tell you that not everybody takes it. And I've already had a student say, do I have to take it? About 80% of the students take it. So there's 20%. I don't know if they pass it or not. They didn't give us a chance to find out. My experience is they probably would have passed it because their classmate did. But out of the 80% who take it, 85%, let's say our class has, what do we got here? We got 14. So probably 2 of them aren't going to take it. So that leaves 12. Out of the 12, 8 of you are going to pass it right away. You're going to get above the 74.5 or whatever it is. Of the other 3 or 4, 3 point something that didn't pass it, half of them will retake it and they'll pass it. So when they take it the second time, they go, oh, now I see, I know what the test is about. I'm more confident that I'm going to do well on it, and they do. The other one person decides, well, I gave it a try. I'm not going to pay $60 to take it again. But after I got 85% pass it the first time who took it, and then at least 85% pass it the second time. That bumps it up to about 90% pass rate on the CLT, including first and second attempts. So if you do take it, there's a 90% chance you will pass it. If you don't take it, there's a 100% chance you won't pass it. So that's why I encourage you to take it. The CLTs, CLAs, I got folks that are getting in the 80s and 90s and they're saying, damn, I didn't do as well as I thought I could. Damn, you passed it. So anything above 75, I'm giving you a parade with ticker tapes and flags and fireworks and all that stuff. They don't ask you, what did you score on that when you apply for a job? They say, you got the certification, you're good. Same thing on the CLT. So don't be trying to crack your brain getting 100 on the CLT. You know at least 75%, then there's a chance that you could recall that other 30% if you were to review it and work in that area and be exposed to it. So do not be intimidated by the CLT. We're going to run out of time this semester for you to get that to us probably by Saturday. So I'm encouraging you, and I will make a big announcement each time somebody sends me their stuff. Hey, we got another CLT pass, and I'll send it out in this class as an announcement. And I will change your point standing as soon as I get your results when you send them to me, your CLT. But we track that in our program. We want to know how many people actually do take and pass the CLA, take and pass the CLT, because the state has us report that. We're on a mission, Ivy Tech is, to get 50,000 people certified by 2025. So we've got 4 years left, and we've got about 15,000 people certified statewide on everything. So we got a ways to go, and every certification that you folks complete makes Indiana look that more attractive as a place to start a business. So it's to make us more competitive and it's to make you more money. Having all of these new skills is just going to be a security blanket for you to fall back on. Then you don't have to worry about where's my next job. You start thinking about where's my career taking me. Like, do I want more training to have more responsibility, and more responsibility means more money, because money is not everything. It's not what's going to make you happily wake up and go to work. If you had a job and your job was drowning kittens, no matter what amount of money they gave you, you would not want that job. And so a lot of it has to do with you being confident and enjoying what you do in your job. And we find that folks will find their niche in this industry. There's something that we offer that you're going to be good at and you're going to be well compensated for. And so then you have a career. And as long as you like doing that, they're going to say, okay, here's the next level of what you're doing. You want to do that, then you got to get this next level of training or this next level of certification. And so it's a growing thing. You don't just go once and you're done with your education. It's a lifelong learning thing. And in this industry, technology changes us, consumer demands changes, world economies changes. So it's ever changing. There's no 2 days that are the same. And you get out of that moving material level pretty quick when you got the right certifications to offer employers. You start being the decision maker, and you use this muscle up here instead of your back. And so that's what we're trying to get you to, is where we critically need you is at that level, at the management level. We can hire minions out of high schools and whatnot to be entry level. We're trying to get you to the next level, because that's where we critically need you in our industry. And you should be compensated for what you know. So I challenge you to finish your CLA if you haven't, finish your CLT. You can do that during the summer. And we're taking a break, I think, from the 20th, the 21st, we're here Monday and Tuesday, until like June 1st or June 2nd. The faculty are on break. But anytime during that time frame, I still answer my emails on my phone. But I want you to take that test, because when the semester's over, you can take that test anytime you want on campus, because nobody else is using the test center. But ideally, we get ProctorU cooperating with you, and you can take it on a beach in Florida while you're on vacation and get it there. But I do encourage you to take all your certifications in whatever courses you're taking, because that's why you're here. If you go to a job interview and say, hey, I took this class, they go, okay, that's great, but I earned this certification. I go, now we're talking. So the certification proves nationally and internationally, you know your stuff. A transcript with an A on it doesn't prove anything other than you're a good student. So these certifications, that's why this is a valuable program, is it proves that you have the skills to earn that certification. So that's all I'm preaching about for having you do that. I'm going to stop our recording, and then we can have any kind of discussions that for questions that you might have.
Mr. Yancey, can I have Robin's information?
Me too.
Yes. Yes. Let me stop recording.